Good morning. It's Monday. I hope you have a good day today and a good week as we go into what is a week that is overshadowed really by remembrance services on the 10th, on the 11th, and next Sunday on the 14th. But we are doing a bit of remembrance, aren't we, ourselves, as we're going through Hebrews chapter 11, because the writer is remembering the great men, mostly, and women of God. Not all of them. My goodness, we'd have a long chapter if all of them were remembered. But we're in verse 23 of chapter 11 of Hebrews, which says, "By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid for 3 months by his parents, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict." Now, to read the story, you need to go back to Exodus 2 and read the first few verses of Exodus 2 and the tail end of Exodus 1. But what had happened was that Joseph had died, and some 400 years later, the exploits of Joseph and the wonderful work that he did to keep people alive during the great famine of 7 years were lost in history, and the new Pharaoh felt threatened by the large increase in the number of people who were descendants of Joseph's family, and they were afraid of them. They saw them as a threat, and they started to oppress them, and they became slaves. The descendants of all of Joseph's brothers and his family became slaves and were greatly oppressed. And in order to cut down the number of men and boys in this nation that lived within the Egyptian world, they asked the midwives to kill the boys when they were born, when they were helping deliver them. And the midwives were afraid and made all sorts of excuses, like the Hebrew women are very quick in their childbirth. They never need a midwife, and by the time we get there, the child's been born, and we don't even see whether it's a boy or a girl, and we can't do it. Anyway, but this verse really highlights the faith shown by Moses' parents, who aren't named in those two chapters. They don't get named in Exodus until we get to Exodus 6 verse 20, and they are named as Amram and Jochebed. Amram the father and Jochebed the mother. And I want to name them today because it's their faith that's celebrated here, because Moses didn't exercise any faith when he was born. It was his parents who hid him for 3 months because they saw that the child was beautiful and they were not afraid of the king's edict. It says they were not afraid. What they did was they dealt with the baby in such a way that the baby could not be traced back to them for punishment. He was set in his Moses basket, in the basket of reeds. He was put on the river Nile and committed to God, really. That was an act of faith, putting him in the river and saying, "Lord, we entrust this child to you because he's not safe with us." And that was such an act of faith. That must have been a very, very difficult thing for Moses' parents, particularly his mother, to do. And she, if you remember, told his older sister Marion to keep an eye on him and see what happened to him. And of course we know that we'll do the rest tomorrow, but this is going to be just a short thought for the day, thinking that sometimes acts of faith are by people who we don't even name. These two parents are not named here. Amram and Jochebed, people of faith, people who trusted God when the whole of their world looked very black. I'd love to talk to them. I think one day in heaven I'll visit their mansion and I'll have a chat with Amram and Jochebed and ask them what it was like in Egypt and what it was like. Maybe they didn't live to see Moses come back and redeem the people, because they would have been quite an age to have done that, because he didn't come back till he was 80. And Moses was not their oldest child. They'd already had Aaron and Miriam in their family. So I doubt if they saw Moses, but they will have, I no doubt, known that Moses had to flee. They will have experienced all of that. But this act of faith is what happened when he was born. When they decided what to do, and they entrusted this baby to God, to the sovereign care of God, because he was not safe with them, but they knew he was safe with God. And that's a wonderful thing, actually. And we should all do that with our children. Entrust them to God, to God's mercies, that God, who loves us and has blessed us with those children, that child, will watch over that child, will want the best for that child more than we even want the best for that child. God is on their side, just like he's on our side. And there are parents who get very anxious about their children, and especially when their children go into danger. We need to trust God for our children. It's an act of faith. We trust and we hope and we know that God is on our side and that he will care for our children. That is a wonderful thing, to trust God for all aspects of our lives, and not to be over-possessive and over-protective of our children. We have to, as it were, push their little boat out onto the sea of life and let the water take them, and let God have his way with them rather than us control their lives. Let God direct their little boats as they sail away. It's the greatest act of trust, to trust God for our children. God is much more able to care for your children than you are. And you don't have to be the sole provider for your children. You don't have to be the one who makes sure everything is safe. You don't have to. You can trust God for your children. And we should do that, just like Amram and Jochebed did. That's my thought for the day. We'll meet again tomorrow. God bless you as you pray for your children today and as you trust them into God's keeping. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.